Greetings, nerds. This is SNN Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. How are you doing this evening? I know. I paused. I was just like, yeah, this is Thursday. I know we recorded Friday a couple weeks ago, so it's just sort of like first week back of like everybody in the household back to normal schedules and stuff with school and everything. So it's just sort of like, oh yeah, it is almost the weekend.
Yeah, no, it is, and it's going to be a quote-unquote long weekend, which, I don't know, 3-day weekends never seem long to me. It just seems like you get a bonus day that you either use it wisely or you completely just, it happens and you're like, oh, I'm back to work. And then counting on down the days to Thanksgiving.
For real. But also, given all the content that we have, I'm kind of looking forward. It's nice to have that long weekend because, there's the Lord of the Rings, the 2 episodes are dropping today, and then of course we got House of Dragon, which I know we'll talk about episode 2 tonight. And yeah, we'll go back and rewatch She-Hulk and Stargirl and other things, and just discover new things. It's like got the nice long weekend to do that.
Yeah, definitely. But what won't be happening during the nice long weekend is, or at all this year, is DC Fandome.
Yeah. Fandome we got official word today that Fandome is no more, at least for 2022, and probably forever.
Yeah.
What DC Warner Brothers, a parent company of DC, made the announcement today that they are, now that they're really putting their focus back on live events. Of course, we have all the Comic-Cons returning, even though they haven't said they're going to show up at New York Comic-Con, which I think, and Dragon Con is this weekend, I believe.
DC, I would not show my face for a very long time.
I think, just, they're moving release dates back, with, which I think was smart with Shazam, because I realized, at first I was like, but then when I realized that that Avatar 2 is also going to be released in December, I'm like, oh yeah, give December to Disney. Let's go ahead. Let's give it to Avatar, because Shazam would have just gotten run over, I think, with Avatar. But yeah, I think, and of course, obviously the Ezra Miller stuff, and nothing good could have come out of trying to force an event this year.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Talking about forcing things, I guess on September 3rd, as part of National Cinema Day, all movies in all formats, showtimes, along with popcorn and soda, will just be $3.
Yeah. I didn't realize that National Cinema Day was coming up, but it makes sense, I guess, with trying to tie it around Labor Day. And even though there's really not many big films out right now, I know I did go see the re-release of Andor, the Get Ready for Andor, Rogue One, but which was, I saw it in IMAX, and every time I watch that film, that's the first time I think I've watched it on the big screen since the initial theatrical release. But I gained a greater appreciation for that film, and it would have been, they had played their cards right. They should have waited till this weekend, but I guess they probably had gotten it all booked when they were planning on dropping the series this week. But obviously they pushed it back to September. But but with the Cinema Day, I think most places will, go see if there's a film you want to see, you can go check it out for $3. I think AMC is doing a bundle where I think it's $5 total, so it's $3 for the ticket and then $2 each for popcorn and drink. So so just check your local theater to see what deals they have, but I think the vast majority of them are doing the $3 deal for National Cinema Day on this upcoming Saturday.
Yeah, I'm just staring at the other headline to read because I thought it was going in one direction, because I've seen this headline before, and I thought I read. So wait. So
Yeah.
I feel like yesterday I read that Ben Kingsley is returning to the MCU as Trevor Slattery in the next Shang-Chi movie, but is that in addition to the new Wonder Man series?
So he is definitely coming back to the MCU. And the only thing I have seen so far is the Wonder Man series.
Okay.
But
I mean, it would make sense for him to be in Shang-Chi too.
But here's the thing. So Destin Daniel Cretton, who produced and co-wrote Shang-Chi, is also serving as executive producer of Wonder Man. So maybe that's where the two things. Maybe that's what you saw with the So the creative folks behind Shang-Chi is also behind Wonder Man. So maybe that's what you read. Maybe the headline writer was didn't convey that correctly, or if you heard it on a podcast somewhere, maybe they completed the two.
Yeah, well, Wonder Man just sounds like something that's going to get dropped. So maybe the writer was like, I don't know if this series is actually going to happen. This might be one of the few MCU shows or pitches that, in concept, but during pre-production, it just falls apart. And they're like, never mind.
Maybe, but I mean, I think it's green light. I mean, given that Creighton is signed on as the executive producer, and we'll probably, given that we have D23 coming up next week, we will probably get more information about this series when we have D23.
Okay, well, we probably will. You're usually right about these things, Will, except for when it comes to DC.
I have given up on even trying to read any kind of crystal ball about what DC and Warner's going to do.
Oh, man. Speaking of DC, we actually do have something decent to talk about because Stargirl returned this week. I watched it. I was not in a pleasant place. I've had like an off week at work. And so I don't know. I just wasn't in the right mindset. However, with that being said, I was surprised by how much I actually liked this episode. I don't know. It was very funny because it's been a while since we've been in Blue Valley. Yep. And just to see to be reminded about where things left off, and how all of these relationships have changed and evolved, and where the JSA is right now, is interesting. Courtney still bothers me, but there's just some, I mean, even her team was like, so are you going to ever tell us why you want to be friends with Cindy now? Like, what's going on here? And it always has to deal with her daddy issues. And maybe I'm just tired of that being the thing. But that being said, I did think it was, I don't know, like Artemis's parents. I liked their whole, like, hello neighbor, we're trying to come back. And I like this idea that these villains that we've seen over the last 2 seasons are, because of the way things ended and having to come together to defeat Calypso, they're like, I want to be rehabilitated. Yeah. I'm a good guy now. And we haven't really seen that before. So I think it was very refreshing.
Yeah. When I was watching this episode last night, I have to say the CW 2.0 superhero shows, at least overall, have really like taken it up a notch. And I think, I think Stargirl, I know, was when the first season it co-aired on the defunct DC streaming platform and the CW, but the tone, because I think it was on another network first and produced by another network, it already started out the gate with a different tone, like you said, that was very refreshing and different than the tropes that we had gotten kind of used to in the Arrowverse.
Mhm.
So I really enjoyed this show because it like just like Superman and Lois, where it's you have the family dynamic with Courtney and Pat and of course Starman now also showing up, because we had, like you said, they really did a great job picking up where everything kind of ended last season, and the Dugans had all gone off on their summer vacation, and that's one other thing too. Is it's like there's kind of a normalcy about them. That yes, it's a superhero show, but they're doing things that normal people do, like go on a vacation, and then Starman was house sitting for them, and they get back, and it's like welcome back, welcome back, and then of course you have the neighbor dynamic and everyone, and then of course, like you said, all the ISA members are now trying to make amends. Like, of course, last season we saw the Shadow to become, I guess, I don't know if I want to say anti-hero, but he definitely was like an aid to Courtney and everyone as they were trying to defeat Calypso. And then this season now we get the Gambler return, and he's trying to make amends, and we learn that he has a daughter that and a real big and partial backstory to why he wants to better himself so that she doesn't end up potentially in a life of crime. So so they really already introduced a lot of little elements at the beginning of this season, and then of course seeing where all our JSA members, as far as like Rick, and I like the fact that they didn't just ignore the fact that he about Solomon Grundy, and we see Rick having to deal with that situation, and Beth and her parents and all the cringe things that her parents were doing and also, yeah, I just really enjoyed, really have missed this show, and I'm glad it's back.
Yeah, they definitely always do this thing with the JSA members where we get 2 minutes here and there, and until their episode airs, where they have their storyline really gets pushed to the forefront. And I think why the writers continue to do that is because at the end of the day, this show isn't called JSA, it's called Stargirl. Yeah. So it's always going to be about Courtney. But that being said, it is surprising how much this supporting cast really does uplift this show overall. And I always find the JSA dynamic to be much more interesting, especially them as a group, which I'm hoping we need to see them more. We need to see that group chemistry more. Over the last 2 seasons, they've spent a lot of time almost separate, going through their own hurdles only to come together for the big battles. But I want to see more teamwork and more of them in the garage together, like we saw in this episode. But they did set up a murder mystery that's apparently going to be a surprise. Another thing about the show, they do a good job with that overall big bad. So it'll be interesting how this season unfolds, because for me, it's always been a slow burn.
Yeah.
But it delivers in the end. It delivers. But I'm always like, the first few episodes, I'm like, okay, get there.
Yeah. They also, I agree. They do get there, and I like the thing that you did whenever you were talking about the other JSA members. The thing what I also like about how they utilize their supporting characters is their B stories. The B story always ties back to the overall issue or overall theme of the season. And even though whenever people are all doing their own things, it always ties back, and it's not it may be a character exploration or something about, about the supporting character, but it services to the bigger arc of the season. And the other thing that with this season premiere in particular, with Starman returning and the dynamic between him and Courtney and the staff, and the arrangement that they were able to come to, because on the one hand he was like, no, Courtney, it's fine, the staff chose you. I literally dug myself out of a grave. But
okay, wait a second before. Yeah. The staff arrangement, but this is Courtney being Courtney, where she gets an idea, and for some reason the much older men in her life can never say, Courtney, that's a ridiculous idea, that's not going to end well. They just go along with it. But that's besides the point. Courtney, if you hear someone say, I dug myself out of my own grave, you ask the question, how the fuck do you do that? You ask, like, legitimately, you are buried underground and in a coffin. How do you, I don't understand that concept to me. And that's what we call, ladies and gentlemen, a red flag. A flag that something is not right. Yes.
Yes. Just a little one. Maybe just a little red flag there.
Yeah. You have to ask the follow-up questions. You can't just be like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. You want to have the staff during the day when I'm at school, and then at night I'll just go out and fight crime.
Yeah. He didn't need the staff to dig himself out of his own grave.
Yeah.
Red freaking flag.
For real. Yeah.
But
yeah, which I wonder how that's going to, clearly, with Mr. Bones, I think, being the big bad this season, and also, I just wonder how, because that all is going to tie together, and there was a nice little moment between Pat and Starman, and on the porch, guys are sitting back drinking beers and stuff, and but I just wonder when, like you said, the big red flags are going to start going ding ding ding. Courtney, you need to slowly roll a little bit and expect, like you said, ask the follow-up question, because something's just not right here.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right. So from that episode of Stargirl to another heroine, She-Hulk, Jennifer Walters is representing Emil Blonsky in this episode, and her star witness is Wong. Wong. This was a cute episode. It didn't do anything outlandish. It was just another installment of Jennifer settling into the superhero law division. We had a B plot that at one point she turns and she breaks the fourth wall and tells us, this is where the B plot intersects with the A plot.
Yeah.
It kind of did, but to go back to what you were just saying about Stargirl, the B plot didn't really, it wasn't cohesive enough. No. I mean, as funny as it is, and as cool as it is to see Meg the Stallion in this universe being represented by She-Hulk, or potentially we will in the future, it still didn't, the whole Asgardian fraud. But then again, this in a way felt like an introduction. We have the first episode that tells us about how she gets her powers. Second episode is okay, well, how can I be a lawyer and be the Hulk? And there's a solution. And now we're introduced to the law firm in a way where this is what we're going to see. We're going to see even, And in this case, because going into it, I was thinking, oh, they're going to represent superheroes. Well, Pug was actually doing the opposite.
Yeah.
He was trying to get justice for somebody using their powers to fraud someone. So, which I wasn't expecting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was. I think that now, because until you said that, I was really like kind of down on the whole B plot, with the exception of Pug and Josh Segura.
Yeah.
But now that you mention it, that actually strengthens that B plot quite a bit, because it gives a different dimension to the show.
Right.
That I did not see, and that's why I always enjoyed talking with you about these things, because when I watched it, I was like, okay, yeah, Dennis is an ass. We get it. He's just, and I did like the way that they came up with the solution as far as how to get Dennis a judgment in his favor.
Mm-hmm.
But in all the things I've heard, people, I did get a chance to listen to some other shows and stuff today, and other write-ups. But you're right, they did flip it a bit, because the way they had the show has been presented, it was Jennifer. Yeah, she's going to be representing superheroes and supervillains, and this is where Matt Murdock was going to tie in with Daredevil, because that's what and all that. But yeah, I mean, in this situation, I mean, the only super thing that Pug was represented was a super dick, but but he was frauded, and I think about like The Boys in this regard, where in that Marvel hasn't really done it, but now the show is starting to take this on, is the ramifications of superheroes doing things, good or bad. And in this situation, like you said, I mean, Pug was representing Dennis because we had a superhero who, well, not a superhero, but we had a person who had superpowers and misused those to hurt someone. Not necessarily in a physical way, but where they defrauded him of $175,000. So that was really a very smart and clever thing that B plot did, was just like, oh no, there's multiple sides to this, living in this world of superpower beings.
Yeah, there is, and there's also, they did the origin story of how she gets their powers very quickly, but what we're finding in this first season is it's more a slow burn of her accepting her situation. Like, she's still living under this impression that things will ever go back to normal for her. It's like, Jennifer, you're a lawyer. Wake the fuck up.
Yeah. It's like, as bad as
what do you think? How do you think this is gonna work? So I wasn't expecting her at the end of it to take what Emil tells her during the trial and suddenly be like, okay, I'm a part of the story, I have to accept it, and if I'm able to be a part of it, like actually have a voice in it, then maybe I can help write my own story, because right now everyone's writing it for me. They even came up with my name,
yep.
Which I hate. So I like that. The 7 soulmates for Emil.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's interesting, and I know we touched on this last week. Yeah. This is a comedy. Again, I'm not really laughing out loud, but I have to say, at the end of the day, the writing is very smart. It's very smart writing.
It is very smart writing. I think I think that's the other thing too. I think people, when they hear comedy, people are thinking laugh track sitcom comedy.
Right.
and it's not. It's very like subtle humor in some regards. Yeah, there are some things like right on the nose. I mean, the whole social media, and getting back to my point of me last week, and it's happening again now. That I see it when they have the social media reactions and but also they were also calling out like fandom.
Yep.
Elements of fandom who have been, trashing this show. It was like, did they like, it wasn't like they like recut the show or anything like that. It's just, all you have to do is look at Captain Marvel and the reaction that people had, and they're like, oh, we're going to have such fun with this in this show. And that's exactly what they did with those various reactions and stuff. And so so I did laugh, I did laugh at those moments actually, because it was kind of punching down, but it was kind of obvious. But at the same time, it was like, I'm glad they're just in universe calling this stuff out. Yeah,
I mean it's funny because the whole breaking the fourth wall, the fact that these are half-hour or less episodes. Mm-hmm. There is that like premise of this is a comedy that you used to see back in the 90s, early 2000s, but it's also very comic booky, and so it's really interesting to see how they're able to walk that line in between those two genres. And have it still make sense where I'm not completely taken out. I mean, Wanda isn't controlling this show by any means. And there are some theories I've heard about the breaking of the fourth wall. I just think it's a good concept. I honestly don't want it to be the Watcher who she's talking to or someone else, because I think it makes the show, because we're getting so many of these days, like stand on its own, have a twist. I mean, that's what WandaVision did to separate themselves from everyone else. Yeah, it's a very concept film show. Yeah. So I think especially now when we've been through like 5 or 6 of these, it helps to have a unique, to be able to explore this world from a perspective that we haven't already seen 3 or 4 times.
Yeah. I mean, they're definitely taking a chance here with this concept, and I guess that's the thing. I mean, we're so deep into the MCU as far as whether it's film or now on streaming that they're having to like find a different way to present this story so it's not repetitive, and also like as we were talking about the humor, there's so much trying to land the jokes, like for example Thor Love and Thunder with Taika and that his humor and other and there's humor that just comes organically to the story, and there's forced humor. And I feel like this show, to me, with over probably 90% of the time, it's just organic to the story. I've only felt like there's only been a few moments where I felt like, okay, they're just reaching for the joke, I think, are there things that are like knee slappers? I mean, whenever she broke the fourth wall of this episode where she was talking about the cameos, and then they had the meta of most meta cameos of Megan Thee Stallion, then, how they linked that all back as far as a cameo show. Yeah, I laugh, whenever she was in the car and with all that, I laughed out loud because I was like, yes, it's so self-aware and it works. And now the big thing that I'm just worried about is like, now that you've had that moment in this episode where you've acknowledged the fact that we're going to have a cameo of the week, are we setting ourselves up sort of like the Mephisto scenario of like, this is when so-and-so is going to show up? I mean, like, when is Daredevil going to show up? When is XYZ character going to show up, and so
but like seriously, when is Daredevil showing up?
it's got fourth, fifth episode.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not in not any way asking you that, because I'm right there with you where you don't. But we can say that about any of these shows, Will. Like you can say that about Stargirl. You can't go into these shows anymore. Here's my recommendation to listeners. Mm-hmm. Don't go into these shows having already mapped out in your head what is going to happen. Like, as much as you want to know, at the end of the day, you don't. Yeah. Because if you're right, well, I saw that coming. And if you're wrong, be like, I would have, if they had gone with my way, it would have been better. Yep. So, I mean, there's a reason why I don't really pay much attention to like plot details, plot spoilers, or Easter eggs, or trailers, or posters. It's because, honestly, the best experience is when I know very minimal, if not anything, about these things, and then I go in and I let the story just be what the story is, and either I like it or I don't.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, with this, and because I think that's part of why I'm enjoying this series so far, because I didn't have, going into it, I had really very low expectations of anything. I just I just went into it, okay, another Marvel show's coming. I'm hearing certain things about it, but I tried to keep an open mind and not watch too many spoilers or whatever, or the trailers or whatever. And and so far, I think it has enhanced my viewing experience. And then, of course, coming here talking to you about it, and then I have my initial like I said, after that episode, I was kind of lukewarm. I mean, I liked it, was okay, but I was sort of like, okay, B plot really, like I said, as before, other than some performances by certain, certain actors and stuff, I could have like not bothered with it. But then, as you pointed out, a completely different perspective about what that story actually served in this episode. I'm like, and so it really, as we talked about before, I mean, I think 30 minutes or so is the right length for this show, and I like the sort of law procedural comedy dramedy that is sort of setting up,
right?
And just ride with it, and then we get our cameos, like we get our Wongs, and we'll get Daredevil when he comes, and whoever else may show up, or celebrity that they signed to represent. And then they can have the twerking at the end. So,
okay. Well, on the twerking note, we're gonna jump over to Westeros because we have to go talk about the second episode, The Rogue Prince, for the show that has already been renewed for a second season, and one of the co-showrunners have already decided to step down. But don't worry, as Will pointed out to me, he will remain as an executive producer, while Alan Taylor will return to both direct and serve as an executive producer. So they're doing some of their own Game of Thrones in the background, if you will. But I just want to kick this off because we talked about this before. Yeah. Like, Will, as someone who did not watch the original series. Yeah. Welcome to the Game of Thrones theme song.
Oh, and I was sitting there smiling when it dropped. I did. I was like, I am fully on this train. That opening, because you described the original opening, which I did, and how they would do the panning and stuff of the world,
map.
The map. And so with this one, and seeing the lineage of the Targaryens, the blood, I was like, I was just like, I was I was Leonardo pointing at the screen. I'm like, yes, I see. I was already on board from like episode 1,
Right.
but with this opening and hearing the original theme, because I know that was one of the big questions you had, is whether or not we were going to get that. I had to hold myself back from like texting you. It's like, did you just see that? Oh, because I didn't want to spoil it for you.
Yeah.
But because I know time zone issues and all that. But I really that just set the tone for me. I'm like, okay, I'm fully on board here, and but the thing about the with the lineage, we broke it down, and when you go through the house,
Yeah,
and that model that in the beginning, we later see it in the episode,
Yep.
with the king,
With the
and yeah. And it all and all each line and then when it gets to Viserys's line, you see the divergence.
Yeah.
It's just like two, so yeah, it's just like I said, that's if you're not sold by that opening, then not even we hadn't even gotten into the story itself, but the opening in and of itself is just amazing. So
it's not even like the opening scene. It's literally the opening credits, which normally you'd be like, how do I fast forward?
Yeah.
But, and Will, when I tell you that they did this, and potentially, so the theme song will remain, but potentially they might make a few changes to where the blood flows. That's all I'm saying. I am curious because something I also thought was very interesting about Game of Thrones opening credit sequence is that map would always change, and it would be a foreshadowing of where you were going to be in the episode, what places. So I'm curious of if we are going to see different things, and that way it makes the viewer more enticing to just sit down and watch it and geek out because you're about to go on an episode. But to get into the second episode, it's good. I mean, at the end of the day, I just love this world because I'm always engrossed in it. I'm not thinking while I'm watching it. I'm just like okay, what's going on here? And there were no really, I mean, we saw some dragons, but what I found interesting in this episode in particular was there wasn't really any fighting, bloodshed. There wasn't any like big action sequences. Yet it felt very thrilling because of the strategic, calculated conversations, the political moves that were occurring, and how this whole idea, you have this king, he has to remarry, but nobody really has an age appropriate person for him. So instead they're like, well, we got a 12-year-old and we got a 16-year-old, so take your pick. But it's still very, even though he is king, who he ends up marrying is such a political move, because now you have, and we talked about him a little bit last week, saying, I wonder what that guy's going to do. And man, he had an episode, but Corlys, Corlys Velaryon is now on Team Daemon. And so forming a whole alliance, because he'll be damned if he doesn't end up with like his bloodline on that throne at some time. But we'll see if that ever does actually happen. I mean, I don't think Daemon would really want to marry a 12-year-old girl either.
No, he's got his own little side piece that he is trying to marry, that dynamic is Damon's moral code is very, very interesting. In that he has his strict, he he is the king's man as far as the king's guard, as far as at least before getting sent to Dragonstone, before he went to Dragonstone, protecting King's Landing. And we saw the things that happened in the first episode, and being judge, jury, and executioner. But then but on the other hand, he's got like this code with his family, where like speaking about Corlys and Daemon's conversation, and Corlys bad mouthing the king, and he was like, da da da, know your place. I can say shit about my brother,
right?
You can't. And then also thinking about how with Rhaena and on the. I mean, I don't want to jump. I know we got a lot to talk about this, and I don't want to jump to the to the Dragonstone, because there's so much to cover. There. Yeah, there's so much to cover there. But that scene on when the retrieve the dragon's egg.
Yep.
And just when she shows up. And we and I love the way they set the stage in the first episode as far as their relationship, and his love for his niece, and her love and I guess admiration of her uncle. I mean they and to see that tension where it was literally about the Daemon's dragon was about to just barbecue Otto and the gang, and then she swoops in with her dragon and clear the way, because what's the dragon's name? Was it Syrax? I can't remember now.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. But she's like, stand back, y'all, because it's very protective of me.
Yeah.
And then the stare down between the two of them, and they're speaking in their native tongue, and it just this tension. I was just like, I was on the edge of my seat, wondering who was going to blink first. And she was steely-eyed at me. She's like, no, I mean, even though this is her plan, that she spoke out of turn earlier in the court, at which all the wise men, were like, know your place. But her recklessness saved the day.
Well, but it wasn't her. Well, she wasn't being reckless. I think she was more reckless in the small council room than making that decision to go and get the egg back, because she is a lot like Daemon, where at the end of the day, like, they're family, and so. She wouldn't have been mad had he just gone to Dragonstone and been making a mockery of her father. She wouldn't. She's just like, that's Daemon. That's Uncle Daemon. He always doing crap like that. What else is new? But when they told her there was a Dragonstone or a dragon egg missing, and that it was the one, because she asked which one, like that, the moment they said which one, she's like, okay, decision made, I'm going.
Yeah. It was like, this is one overdue, for my deceased little brother. And when I say reckless, I think I was really referencing back to the council chamber. But I mean, she was very deliberate and very clear, and it really sets up like.
Well, she knows the line. At the end of the day, and I think that's another reason why Daemon really couldn't do anything in that moment, because she was right. And I think, looking back on it, I think her conversation, or her debate, if you may, with the queen who never was, Corlys's wife. Because to me, that was a draw. Yeah, that was a flat out draw where both of them were taking jabs at each other left and right, and speaking some harsh truths about each other. But neither came out victorious, and I think that was like a workout for
Yeah.
Rhaenyra, so that when she
Yeah.
did later on in the episode face off against Daemon, it's like, oh, trust me, I sparred against the queen who never was. I can take on you.
Yeah, yeah.
He's nothing to me. Forgive this father. But what I took away from that scene and that moment between her and Daemon, and why I think it left such an impression, is because we're talking episode 2.
Mm-hmm.
I love how we're getting bits and bits of this relationship, of this love, that we know the strain and the tension is just gonna like be pulled on throughout the rest of the season, if not another season. So, because we know it's not going to end well.
No.
They're not going to be a happy, lovey, like there's only so many times Rhaenyra can say that to him before he might actually kill her, or she might have to kill him. So it's that's what I find to be fascinating about it, is you're setting this up now really well. I know it's not going to last.
Yeah. But also, I think it's an interesting glimpse into how, if one of them were the king or queen, how they may rule the kingdom.
Well, welcome to the Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Welcome. That's
thank you.
About.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I mean, you hit such a good mark that it brings a smile to my face, because I forgot about that aspect of this show, where it was funny in the first few seasons of Game of Thrones. You were looking at so many different things, but then as people kept moving in and out of the throne, you're suddenly start to question exactly what you brought up, is about all these people say they want to be the ruler, but what would their reign look like? Would they even know how? Yeah. Especially Rhaenyra, who she would be the first queen. Mm-hmm. And what does that mean? And then you have all these men looking to her, and I mean, the king is already someone who everyone is targeting, either to be on their side or to potentially get out of the way. Yeah. If you're suddenly a queen, how much will you have like a potentially somebody's going to kill you? Like, everyone wants you gone. So
yeah. Because you see, because I mean, like, little tasks, like clearly that the moment they're on the bridge at Dragonstone. Mm-hmm. But then also, like, even though she was, she spoke, at least in their world, she spoke out of turn at the council, but then they still trusted her to be able to go select a guard for the king, and then she picked and then she's like, and she was very discerning. She's like, I don't want a bunch of guys who've never seen any real combat. I mean, I want someone who's been in the mud, I want, and so, there's that. And then Daemon, as I said, between his code, but then, and his very defense of the realm, as far as being head of the king's guard, but then, and then you see his decision making with his girlfriend, his mistress, and his judgment. And I'm sitting there watching these scenes with Daemon, and it's like he it seems like he's getting so lost in, like, because he cooked up this story where he's like, oh yeah, I'm with child, we're with child, and we're gonna have this family, even though he's got a wife, and basically to draw Otto and everyone out and so it's like, what is his, I mean, as far as Viserys, we know his vulnerabilities and stuff, and he's he's probably the right king for peacetime, but given that we know winter is coming, he's not probably the best person to be in that role, given that we know that people are coming over the hill.
Yeah, the free cities.
Yeah.
Well, it's not. They're not even coming over the hill. They're feeding people the crabs.
They're feeding people to the crabs. Yeah, and Corlys is like, yeah.
We got our glimpse of Prince Cregus, the crab feeder. I don't know how to pronounce it. We'll find out soon.
Yeah.
That opening image was very cool. I didn't really understand what's going on, and then they went back to it, and they had to basically tell me through exposition. They're feeding people the crabs. Oh, that's what that was. I thought like the guy was already dead or about like pretty much dead, and the crab was just like doing like being like, oh, looky here. No, he's being got it. Makes more sense now.
Yeah, yeah.
Very interesting. But see, that's another thing that this show, 2 episodes in, has already figured out how to do, is to make the viewer captivated by this political, very medieval like story of power and succession, but then bookend it with these more fanciful elements and say, oh, don't forget, this is an entirely made up world.
Yeah.
There's dragons and people are being fed to crabs, and we have a prince who, I don't even know how to describe what he looked like, but there's other things going on and other creatures, if you will, in this world. So it's interesting how they're able to do that, make you get lost in the more realistic stuff, only to remind you, no, this is a fantasy world.
Yeah, it is a fantasy world, but then with real but the political machinations and something you talked about earlier when we first got started, with Viserys and Otto and Corlys, using their position and using their daughters to curry favor and curry their own power, to determine the fate of the realm as far as producing an heir. And Viserys, I mean, Paddy Considine just nailed it. That whenever he and the little what was it, Lynera, I think her name, Corlys, when they were walking there in the garden, and he, everything about that scene, from how it was the setting to how it was acted, just conveyed everything that all of us in the audience was thinking, which was like this. Even Viserys was like, "This is just, I just can't."
Yeah,
it was just the ick factor, and he's like, but then he, I think, what made it so visceral in that, but it made it work, was, it was a disgusting thing that we all agree that he would have to do, and he showed that on his face as they're talking, and also the disconnect in the age, but then it brings up again, and what makes the show so good is the complexity of duty versus decency.
Well, I think that what you're getting, for me, what I find interesting about Viserys' dilemma is in the first episode when Hightower tells Alicent, "Hey, I want you to go comfort the king." Everyone's like, "You pimping out your daughter? She's 16, she's 15. I don't know. She's older." So in this episode, they're like, okay, Viserys has to choose between 2 daughter brides, or 2 child brides. You have a 12-year-old who he towers, like the size comparison is ridiculous.
Yeah, everything about it. Yeah.
but like for whatever reason, like as much what you were saying about Patty doing such a good job acting in that scene, his scenes with Allison, like as a viewer, you're less with those scenes because there's both of the actors between Allison and Viserys are really doing a good job of trying to build a bond through loss. Yeah. Which is a very common thing. I mean, people honestly do relate and find empathy with one another if they have both suffered from similar tragedies in their lives. So it makes sense. And there's also this the fact that there's a secrecy to it and she's a little bit older, but then guys, if the other one was 12 and she's 16, we're talking about 4 years. Yeah. It's still a bit, but the way they were able to do that to kind of soften the marriage that they were going to end up having and make you feel a little less gross about that. Yeah.
And I guess to your point, like how they acted it, because they did, they found that bond over the little models and the little statue figurines and stuff. So, it took that age gap out of the equation for you for a while, because you're right. I mean, the way they interacted, it truly did seem like a bond. Whereas here it's just like, here's this man towering over this little child.
Right. Well, even how he's able to talk to her about his daughter and not knowing what to do with Rhaenyra, how to talk to Rhaenyra, and she's able to give him some advice that ends up working. Like that for a moment, that was a very spousal relation or conversation to have. And man, all I can think about is the look in Rhaenyra's eyes when she realizes. And this is where people are already writing Rhaenyra and Alicent fan fiction.
Yep.
Already writing it, because I picked up on it the moment we see the scene in the park and she talks about it. All I want to do is be on my dragon with you. I'm like, okay. Well, Otto has other plans for Alicent, but see, again, another relationship where these characters are starting off in a place of love and friendship and respect, and by the end of the season they're going to be on opposite sides of this, and it's already starting. And but hats off to the actress who plays Rhaenyra, because like her eyes, oh my god, were just so piercing in that moment of recognition and realization. It was so good.
It was. I mean, everything about, like you said, everything about this episode, sometimes, this was just a true display of sometimes less is, you don't need, sometimes just words and exposition but I think just solid acting. I mean, across the board, Matt Smith, all, Patty Considine, all the actors really just putting on a clinic on like how to use your, like you said, your eyes and dialogue and delivering dialogue, and blocking and all the just technical aspects and production too. I mean, like, that whole scene on the bridge was not even, I think it was like shot in the, it was special effect. It was like, their version of the volume. So everything about this episode was just like chef's kiss. I mean, I just really, really enjoyed it. And I think it shows the versatility of the show. I mean, next week we'll probably, who knows, we'll probably have a bunch of crap eater battles and stuff, but and we'll be talking about how awesome the scenes on the battlefield are. But this was truly just an episode where it just really set the table for building on things that were established in the first episode, taking them to the next level to propel things forward. And we know there's going to be a time jump at some point. And to your point about the changing of the opening credits and seeing how things are that line will change as we know it eventually will. I'll be keeping an eye out for that now. It's like, okay, is there additional bloodline coming through here now?
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's just so many things. It's just, I see, like I said, I missed out on the first go around with the original series, but I am happy that I am on the House of the Dragon train now. Yeah, I'm fully on the train, and I just can't wait. I'm just looking. Appointment TV is back.
Yeah, definitely. It's crazy because it took me a moment to realize this is episode 2.
Yeah,
and I feel like we've been talking about this for at least 4 weeks now.
Yeah, but in a good way. That's not
I like that, and that's my final point on the show tonight. Is so far it's done a really good job, and maybe it's because it's a prequel of a show I already loved, but just making me feel immersed in this world and like, oh, I've known these characters my entire life, but we're talking episode 2. So
episode 2.
It's crazy.
We are. But as someone who I know you did watch the series, and I know, like many fans, you were disappointed with that 8th season. To see you regain your joy of watching and exploring this universe again, and 10.2 million people did this past week, and the show just seems to keep on growing. So it didn't have a sophomore slump. So
yeah. Definitely. All right. On that note, Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me at Will M. Polk, WILLMPOLK on Twitter.
And you can follow me at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at SNN Nerd. Friend us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram. And visit our website, www.snnnerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.